In half an hour, Sunderland salutes Mick McCarthy's championship-winning footballers as they parade through the city. That's after the ITV News.
The new face of conservatism. But how will George Osborne face up to Gordon Brown?
I've got to hold Gordon Brown to account, but I think his policies of increasing taxes, increasing regulation are the wrong ones for the British economy, and I'm not going to be afraid to say it.
Appointing a 33-year-old as their new Shadow Chancellor, the Conservatives are placing their hopes for a revival in the next generation. Also tonight, sales slump, will the high street downturn ripple through the economy? Beacon of liberty, Bush lords it in Russia's backyard. And a different class, Thiago helps Chelsea to a record points haul.
Here in the northeast, a policeman admits stabbing his wife to death at their home after she confessed to having an affair.
Good evening. A new-look Conservative shadow cabinet was unveiled today, and the big surprise is that there are some very young faces. Notably among them is George Osborne. At the age of 33, he's been appointed Shadow Chancellor, which means that he'll have the job of taking on Labour's Gordon Brown. And George Osborne is joined on the front bench by another rising star. David Cameron is the new Shadow Education spokesman. He is 38. Our senior political correspondent John Ray is at Westminster tonight. John?
Trevor, there really are some new kids on the block tonight, some surprisingly fresh faces at a very senior level, and for them the next few months could be make or break. And we learned tonight there will be a Tory leadership contest by the end of the year, so the personal and political stakes couldn't be higher.
Some interviews with some broadcast
Young,
networks.
gifted and going places. George Osborne promoted today alongside his friend David Cameron. Together they've been called the Tories Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. But they were still at school when those two met, so is it men against boys.
You must be terrified.
Well, sure, but you know, I think the person who's most terrified of Gordon Brown at the moment is Tony Blair, and yeah, I've got to hold Gordon Brown to account.
I think that we've all got what it takes. Time will tell. It's a tough master in there, the House of Commons, and time will tell whether we're up to it, but I think we are.
But it's this man who's suddenly saddled with the heaviest burden of expectation. So who is George Gideon Oliver Osborne? Aged just 33 and married with 2 children, he's certainly no proletarian. In fact, he's blue-blooded, an heir to a baronetcy. He was William Hague's speechwriter and advisor before entering Parliament in 2001 as MP for Tatton. The big question now, could he, like Tony Blair, change the fortunes of his party, or, like his former boss, peak too soon and end in failure?
A lot of people will look at you and think that in you, the Conservatives have found their Tony Blair. What do you think about that?
I think it's a ridiculous label. I mean, you know, Tony Blair had to renounce everything he believed in to lead the Labour Party and turn it around. I don't have to renounce everything I've believed in, don't have to renounce everything that the Conservative Party has believed in. I've got to broaden the appeal of the Conservative Party, and I've got to do that with other members of the Shadow Cabinet and indeed all Conservatives.
Is he going to be more like Tony Blair, or is he going to be more like William Hague?
I'm sure George Osborne is well aware of all the precedents in politics about doing well young, but he's hard-working, vigorous, and I wish him all the luck in the world.
In fact, Michael Howard's reshuffled pack gives every possible future leader a prominent job. George Osborne's move is the most eye-catching, but his friend, 38-year-old David Cameron, also faces a big test at education. Former Europe Minister Francis Maude becomes party chairman, and former Foreign Secretary Malcolm Rifkind, newly returned to the Commons, shadows work and pensions. Liam Fox moves from party chairman to shadow Foreign Secretary, while the early favourite for the leadership, David Davis, stays put as shadow Home Secretary.
I'm sure you'll find out in good time.
Some fear a long and bloody leadership tussle now beckons.
I regret to say it probably will be, but it needn't be. It really needn't be. Please could we grow up? Please could we fight Labour? That's what we're about.
But Michael Howard says he'll now quit in the autumn. Time for the new men to make a mark or fall spectacularly short.
John, is this favouring of youth a demonstration of a deft political touch, or is it a massive political gamble?
Well, George Osborne, and for that matter David Cameron, wouldn't be the first next Prime Ministers to crash and burn under the weight of tremendous expectation. Of course, I think what Michael Howard is clearly trying to do here is draw a line under the Thatcher years and under the Major years, pushing forward people who aren't tarnished by what went on way back then. The problem, of course, that Michael Howard has got is that there is an exceedingly thin dividing line in some people's mind between endorsing the next generation and actually being seen to anoint the next set of leaders. And I think there are some potential leadership rivals included who will be more than a little bit miffed by what's gone on today. The problem for the Tories as a whole, though, now you have all these contenders on the starting line, you rank up the pressure on them. The danger is they start fighting like ferrets in a sack.
John Ray, thank you. And George Osborne might have some instant ammunition to deploy against the Chancellor Gordon Brown. Yesterday saw a big fall in figures for manufacturing output. Today those for retail sales were equally bad. They show that people have been buying less in the shops than they have for 10 years. Our business correspondent Lauren Taylor looks at what it means for the economy.
Shoppers are holding back and the high street is feeling the pain. Today's figures show retail sales have fallen to their lowest level for 10 years. Add to that the worst decline in manufacturing for nearly 3 years, plus a slowdown in the housing market, and the economic picture looks pretty gloomy. Of course, everything is interlinked.
The real problem is that retail spending and the consumer's feeling of well-being is inextricably bound to the housing market. And the housing market, which was going like a train, has really slowed down very markedly. As a result of that, people are feeling a little bit less well off, they become a little bit more cautious, interest rates have gone up, and the net effect is that people are spending a bit less.
So it's this kind of thing, fittings for a new bathroom and other so-called big-ticket items like cookers and furniture that people are putting off buying, hitting the manufacturers too.
For the Chancellor, the economic bad news has been piling up in the last few days, and there are contradictory pressures which leave little room for manoeuvre. On the one hand, growth is falling. The National Institute for Economic and Social Research says it's dropped from 3% to 2.7%. Some way below Mr Brown's budget prediction of 3 to 3.5% for the year. Low interest rates help growth, but on the other hand, inflation is rising. In March, the Consumer Prices Index jumped from 1.6 to 1.9%, only just inside the government's 2% target. And of course, one way of controlling that is to put interest rates up.
We're very much of the view that interest rates have peaked and they don't need to go up again. However, we don't think that the Bank of England is going to panic and start bringing rates down in a hurry. They are still concerned about inflation, which appears to be still rising. However, if we do get continued bad news on the economy, it means that we could actually see a change of face by the Bank of England over the next few months and perhaps see rates coming down before the end of this year.
Tomorrow, the Bank of England will publish its quarterly inflation report with its reasons for keeping rates on hold yesterday and its first verdict since the election on the broader state of the economy. Lauren Taylor, ITV News.
The people of Georgia, birthplace of Stalin, were chanting a very different name today, that of George Bush. The American president was there praising Georgia's peaceful revolution and its new democracy as a beacon of liberty. And in a clear message to Moscow, Mr Bush said Georgia's sovereignty must be respected. Robert Moore reports on the reception the president got.
The path of freedom you have chosen is not easy, but you will not travel it alone.
This is what the president loves the most, talking of liberty and freedom to people who have recently emerged from autocratic rule. It conforms to his philosophy that democracy can flourish anywhere. Today it was Tbilisi, the capital of the former Soviet Republic of Georgia. And Mr Bush tried to link the Rose Revolution of 2003 to freedom movements elsewhere in the world.
As you build freedom in this country, you must know that the seeds of liberty you are planting in Georgian soil are flowering across the globe. Georgia is today both sovereign and free, and a beacon of liberty for this region and the world.
But however comfortable Mr Bush seemed, and he has rarely looked so cheerful, these images of him dancing to traditional Georgian music were bound to upset Moscow. Russia and Georgia are locked in a dispute over the presence of 2 military garrisons and over the fate of separatist regions in the Caucasus. The president did not take sides, but the Kremlin has inevitably seen this as interference in its sphere of influence. Even as Vladimir Putin and George Bush claim a real friendship that allows them to air differences openly, there are mounting concerns in Washington that Russia is turning its back on democratic reform. One leading congressman today declared that Russia should be expelled from the G8 summit of developed nations.
Russia is restricting the freedoms of ordinary Russians, centralizing power, moving back towards that model that was discarded with the collapse of the Soviet Empire. As a result, it does not belong in the G8.
In the next hour or so, President Bush will arrive back here in Washington. Relations with Russia will always be important, but there are more pressing challenges elsewhere. That perceived nuclear threat posed by North Korea and Iran is certain to dominate American foreign policy for the next few months. Robert Moore, ITV News, Washington.
The private heartache of Mary Ann Lanahan's family was made painfully public by her uncles today. They said the 16-year-old found dead in a Reading park was a normal, bright girl with many friends. They said she didn't deserve to die. Today, the detective leading the hunt for her killer told ITV News he'd never investigated a worse case. From Reading, Paul Davis reports.
Candles burned tonight on the spot where a 16-year-old life was brutally ended. Among the tributes, the same question again and again. Why was Mary Ann Lanahan tortured, sexually assaulted and murdered? It was a question posed by Mary Ann's Uncle Tony as he pleaded for public help to catch the killers.
Nothing can justify the horrendous attack on Mary Ann and her friend. We believe there are people out there who know exactly what happened and why, and we need these people to come forward.
Police divers investigating reports that a car had been deliberately driven into the River Thames at Reading, close to where the girls were attacked, have located and recovered a vehicle and are now trying to establish whether it played any role in the murder. The girls were taken by force from the car park of this disused pub by 6 men. In a room at this hotel, they were subjected to hour after hour of brutal sexual attack. It's perhaps telling that officers won't give any details of the suffering Mary Ann endured before she was killed by a single knife wound. But the experienced detective in charge of the investigation told me it's the worst thing he's ever seen.
I'm extremely shocked, and as my officers, to actually think what these girls went through for that period of time, and to end up in a cold, lonely park in the middle hours of the morning is actually a horrendous incident at the top of anything I've ever dealt with.
Senior police officers, family members, those who knew Mary Ann, those who didn't. An entire community has been appalled by what happened here and is asking the same question. Why? Paul Davis, ITV News, Reading.
The sisters of Robert McCartney have won the promise of cash help from Euro MPs in their attempts to bring his killers to justice. MEPs in Strasbourg asked that some of the money from the EU set aside for victims of terrorism should be used to help the sisters finance a civil action against IRA members suspected of killing Mr. McCartney.
I hope that our action, our decision today, will help to break the wall of silence surrounding Robert's murder. I pledge to continue to support our struggle in any way we can, and I welcome them again here.
And in Northern Ireland, the High Court there has been told that a man will be charged with the Omagh bombing. 29 people died in the 1998 attack. 35-year-old Sean Gerard Hoy will appear in court in 2 weeks' time. Four men with a combined age of 242 years rolled back just a few of those tonight to announce another lucrative tour. The Rolling Stones are back on the road in August to coincide with the launch of a new album. Harry Smith reports on how the band are putting the emphasis on the business of their shows.
The song they chose to launch their latest tour was Start Me Up. They're playing it at an age when most people are thinking of winding down. But not the Stones. They've dominated stages all over the world for 4 decades. But what is it that keeps them going? They didn't like it when they were asked, Was it music or money?
It's not a very popular question. We're going to pass on that silly question.
You can have the money, pal.
But if they won't say, then what do the figures tell us? A Stones tour earns lots of satisfaction. Their Steel Wheels tour of 1989 made £150 million, a record for the time. Their Bridges of Babylon tour from 1997 made a staggering £227 million. And their 40 Licks tour 2 years ago grossed £175 million. Together with increased record sales and CD and DVD spin-offs, tours have helped the band earn more than £1 billion since 1989.
Money. Money and profile. You know, they've been a very relevant rock and roll band for 30 years. So mainly it's money, but also I think it has a lot to do with ego.
Sir Mick Jagger will be 62 this year. Will this be his last tour?
And we certainly don't announce the tour as the last tour. I think that's a trap to sort of try and get other people to buy your tickets and say, well, I'll never see them again. We never said this is going to be our last tour. We never think about it. We take each tour as it comes.
But it won't come for British fans until summer next year. Harry Smith, ITV News.
Now for a look at the markets, and more bad news on the high streets pushed the FT 100 share index down for the second day in a row. It finished on 4,892, almost 18 points down. And the Dow Jones slipped by a hefty 103 points to close at 10,281. Tonight, the pound is down almost 1/4 cent against the dollar at just over $1.88. And now with tonight's sports news, here's Felicity Barr.
Thank you, Trevor. Chelsea have underlined why they are the new champions of England. They won 3-1 at Old Trafford tonight, beating 2 of Manchester United's records along the way. Chelsea's 29th victory of the season is the best in Premiership history, and so is their tally of 94 points. Our sports editor Tim Hewitt was watching.
United's players gave the champions of Chelsea a guard of honour, but were more concerned about restoring some honour of their own. And they didn't take long to move ahead. Ronaldo had a shot, the ball took a deflection, and Ruud van Nistelrooy was there to steer it home. But 9 minutes later, and out of nowhere, Chelsea equalised with an extraordinary shot from Thiago. The distance was 32 yards, and Roy Carroll in the United goal seemed rooted to the spot. No one was more surprised than Jose Mourinho. In the second half, Eidur Gudjonsson, with perfect timing, slipped the United defence and coolly recorded his 15th goal of an outstanding season. And the icing on the cake was provided by a clearly offside Joe Cole. Chelsea underlining just how much the balance of power in the Premiership has shifted. Tim Hewitt, ITV News.
Arsenal's top scorer Thierry Henry could make a surprise return to action against Everton tomorrow night. The French striker's been on the sidelines for more than a month because of a groin strain. It was thought he may miss next week's FA Cup final, but Arsene Wenger says Henry is fit again and just needs match practice.
He has worked hard in training, has joined the squad today, normal training, so he has absorbed normal training, but I don't think he has any physical problem now. It's more competition that he needs.
Southampton will have to fight for Premiership survival without their top scorer Peter Crouch after the FA rejected an appeal against his sending off last Saturday. Crouch was shown a red card for clashing with Crystal Palace defender Gonzalo Sorondo. He'll now miss Southampton's last game of the season against Manchester United on Sunday. St Helens have sacked their Australian coach Ian Millward for gross misconduct. The Super League club's disciplinary hearing found him guilty on 3 counts of extreme verbal abuse. Millward is appealing against that decision. And that is our look at tonight's sports news. Trevor.
Thanks, Felicity. It's time now for the news from your area. I'll be back after that with a reminder of our headlines and a look at some of the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Until then, let's rejoin our ITV colleagues around the country.
Good evening.
A man and woman have been charged with murdering a 3-month-old baby. Aaron O'Neill died in Newcastle General Hospital on February the 10th from head injuries. 32-year-old Paul O'Neill and 19-year-old Jodie Taylor, both from Kenton in Newcastle, will appear before the city's magistrates tomorrow morning. A policeman has admitted stabbing his wife to death after she confessed to having an affair. Cleveland officer Ivor Jones pleaded guilty to manslaughter due to diminished responsibility.
Teesside Crown Court today, and a policeman appears as a prisoner in the dock on a charge of murder. His victim, 36-year-old Maria Jones, the killer's wife and mother to 3 children. It was last December that Cleveland officers were called to the £250,000 home they shared in Ingleby Barwick near Stockton. Maria Jones was found with multiple stab wounds. Maria's husband and killer, PC Ivor Jones, had a history of depression though, a factor which came into consideration at today's court hearing. The 40-year-old denied murder but admitted manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility, a plea accepted by the prosecution, though his exact punishment's being postponed to allow time for further reports to be drawn up into the case. The matter was then adjourned for sentencing on June the 3rd. But more background to the case had already come to light at an earlier hearing at Teesside Magistrates Court. There, lawyers for PC Jones said that Maria Jones had helped him through his depression after the death of his father and brother, but later moved to the Midlands, where she began an affair with a younger man. It's claimed she confessed to the affair, saying she wanted an open marriage. Still depressed, it seems PC Jones put an end to those plans by killing her.
A man's died at the wheel of his car seconds before it crashed into barriers. It's thought 50-year-old Simon Elder from Yarm suffered a heart attack as he drove onto the A19 Tees flyover. The Jaguar smashed into the central reservation. One lane of the slip road was closed while police worked at the scene. The accident happened just an hour after a minibus from a day centre in Stockton hit a van. No one was badly hurt. A union is promising to support hundreds of workers who've lost their jobs at a civil engineering firm. It's been confirmed that O'Donnell Brothers, which is one of Northern Electric's main contractors, has gone into administration.
As the staff faced a second day of uncertainty, it was time for some answers. And shortly after the administrators arrived at the O'Donnell Brothers headquarters at Leamington in Newcastle this lunchtime, they agreed to speak to representatives from the union and the workforce. After a brief meeting, the staff were told that 230 of them will be receiving redundancy notices.
The administrators have made it plain to us that there's very little chance of the company ongoing, to continue with its operations. We did ask what likelihood there would be of the work being carried on, and the administrators are having a meeting about that this afternoon. And obviously we've said that if that is the case, we will ask that the guys are transferred over as a matter of course.
The company is one of NEDL's main contractors. It's believed the deal to lay cables had 5 years to run and involved around 200 workers based at the site in Leamington and also here at Haverton Hill in Stockton. The union is now hoping to secure some of this work for the redundant employees. It also believes there may be a case for unfair dismissal.
There are changes for some of the North East MPs following Tony Blair's cabinet reshuffle. Durham North West MP Hilary Armstrong keeps her job as Government Chief Whip, while a member for Tynemouth Alan Campbell becomes a junior whip. But Fraser Kemp, who represents Houghton and Washington East, has stepped down as Assistant Whip, and Sunderland South MP Chris Mullin loses his role at the Foreign Office. Plans for a statue of one of the region's best-loved characters have been shelved. Andy Capp was immortalised in cartoons by Hartlepool's Reg Smythe, but some councillors feel putting up a bronze cast of him would tarnish the town's image.
He's world famous, Andy Capp, the chauvinist work-shy gambler, happiest when propping up the bar with a pint. When his creator Reg Smythe died 7 years ago, a statue of Andy Capp on the headland seemed a fitting tribute. Now that seems unlikely, even though the plan was approved and a model was even made. Accusations of political correctness have been levelled at the council and denied.
This political correctness thing is a load of...
It's nothing to do with political correctness, although people will jump on the bandwagon, especially people who have thought of the idea in the first place.
I still think that the public should be asked. If they're asked and say yes, we should go ahead with it. If they asked and say no, fine, shelve it. But political correctness should not get in the way.
The view from the public on the headland was pretty clear.
Oh yes, handicap, yeah.
Oh yes, handicap.
Definitely.
Well, I should think they did, because he kept the cartoons good. If he drank and he smoked, why, they all do it down here, don't they, Ronnie?
Well, of course he should. Yeah, he's a bloke from the town, isn't he?
And that's it. Stay with Tyne Tees for a special programme on Sunderland's return to the Premiership. Sunderland Salutes is next. But from all of us on the Late Team, have a very good night. Bye-bye.
Tyne Tees weather with BMIBaby.com.
Hello there, yes, Sir Thomas Lipton, one of those men who helped cure the British shows. Don't worry, we'll just put the kettle on and have a nice wee cup of tea. You need a wee drama out there tonight because it's quite chilly. The winds are falling light, the numbers are falling quite rapidly. These wee showers at the seaside have gone now, and there's a touch of frost just about wherever you are, gardeners. Tomorrow, it's a nice day, similar to today, except the winds are lighter, so it's going to feel more pleasant. Plenty of sunshine out. The numbers even getting up 2 or 3 Celsius above what they reached today. I think we're looking at 13, 14 Celsius. That's the mid-50s Fahrenheit. And as I say, with the light winds, it'll feel very pleasant. Looking ahead now to Thursday, where the wind's back off the sea, so it's on the cool side.
Tyne Tees weather with BMIBaby.com, the airline with tiny fares.
Hello again. A reminder of tonight's main news. The Conservative leader Michael Howard has announced his new shadow cabinet. 33-year-old George Osborne will take on Gordon Brown in his new job as Shadow Chancellor. Retail sales have suffered the biggest monthly fall for 10 years. And President Bush has received a rapturous reception in the former Soviet Republic of Georgia. He called it a beacon of liberty. It's time now for a look at the front pages of some of tomorrow's newspapers. The Guardian says the Iranian government is set to provoke an international crisis by confirming the resumption of its suspended nuclear program. Its front page shows a picture of the new Holocaust memorial in Germany. The Times leads with a shadow cabinet reshuffle. Its photograph is of the actress Renée Zellweger at her wedding in the Caribbean. The Telegraph says the shadow cabinet reshuffle of what it calls the young stars is Michael Howard's last hurrah. The picture is a computer-generated image of Tutankhamun. And the Mirror's front page is dominated by one word, criminal. It pictures one of its undercover reporters on the beat as a police community support officer, saying his experiences on the front line of policing are shocking. That's it tonight. Coming up on the ITV News channel, our interview with the new Shadow Chancellor George Osborne, his thoughts on the challenges ahead. We're back tomorrow, same time, 10:30. Good night.